So we've come to the very end of the book of Jeremiah, and wow, it concludes with a serious 1-2 punch. First up, you get this stunning prophecy against the world's greatest superpower, Babylon. And then, right after, we get the cold, hard history of Jerusalem's tragic fall. This is the moment where God's prophetic word just collides with historical reality. It's powerful stuff.
Thus shall Babylon sink and shall not rise. I mean, just listen to that. This is the final definitive sentence of Jeremiah's entire prophetic message. This isn't a warning anymore, it's a verdict. Now you have to imagine, for an empire that seemed absolutely invincible, that had pretty much conquered the known world, this was an unimaginable thing to say. And it really sets the stage for everything we're about to explore, the theme of inescapable divine judgment.
Okay, so let's break this down into 2 acts. First, in Act 1, we're diving straight into Jeremiah 51. We're calling this the Word of Judgment. This chapter is this long, kind of poetic, and incredibly detailed prophecy that lays out God's final damning case against the mighty Babylonian Empire. So you might be asking, why this absolute certainty of destruction? Well, the text presents a really clear indictment. See, this wasn't random. It was a direct consequence. Babylon was guilty of just staggering, arrogant pride, a belief that its power was absolute. It was guilty of idolatry, and this one was personal. It faced God's vengeance for destroying his temple and for its sheer cruelty against his people.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The text uses this fascinating metaphor, calling Babylon a golden cup in the Lord's hand. This reveals a pretty complex truth. God had actually been using the empire as an instrument, a tool, to pour out judgment on other sinful nations. It made the whole earth drunken with defeat and chaos. But now, Babylon's job as that instrument is over.
And this right here reveals such a critical principle. Being used as a tool for God's purposes doesn't give you a free pass, not at all. Babylon acted out of its own pride, its own cruelty, and for that, it would be held accountable. The message is pretty clear. No empire, no matter how powerful it seems, is above judgment for its own sins.
And then things get really urgent. The prophecy delivers a direct command to all the Jewish exiles living inside Babylon. Flee. It's this desperate call to escape, a stark warning not to get caught up in the city's downfall. This just underscores how certain and absolutely devastating the coming judgment is going to be.
And here's why they had to run. The prophecy doesn't just describe a military defeat, it describes a total and permanent erasure. Babylon will become, quote, desolate forever, so completely ruined that, as the text says, no one will even be able to reuse its foundation stones to build something new. It's going to be wiped off the map.
And to just seal the deal on this prophecy, Jeremiah commands an official named Sariah to perform this incredibly powerful symbolic act. He's told to go read these words of doom aloud right in the heart of Babylon, then tie a stone to the scroll and throw it into the Euphrates River, declaring, "Thus shall Babylon sink and shall not rise." It's a physical picture of the prophecy's absolutely certain fulfillment.
All right, let's shift gears and move into Act 2, the Word Made History. So after 51 chapters of prophecy, the book's entire tone changes. It's dramatic. Chapter 52 is basically a historical appendix, a stark, almost journalistic account of Jerusalem's fall that serves as undeniable proof that God's words of judgment, well, they're never empty threats.
This tragic story kicks off with Judah's last king, Zedekiah. And the text is blunt about it. He was an evil king, and his final foolish act was to rebel against Babylon. This one decision triggered the exact catastrophe Jeremiah had been warning him about for 40 years.
So the chapter just lays out this grim, step-by-step timeline. The siege drags on for 2 years, until a horrible famine grips the city. There's literally no bread left for the people. The city walls are finally breached. King Zedekiah tries to flee, but he's captured. And then comes the final awful destruction. The Holy Temple, the royal palace, every great house in the city, all put to the torch, and the people are marched into exile.
The account even gives us hard numbers, recording these different waves of deportation that just systematically emptied the land of its people. Now, these figures might seem a little small, but a lot of scholars believe they probably represent only the heads of families, or the men, which means the total number of people exiled was way, way larger. It was the complete uprooting of an entire nation.
Before burning the temple down, the Babylonians stripped it bare. And you gotta understand, this was so much more than just looting. This was the symbolic dismantling of a nation's very soul. The great bronze pillars, that massive water basin, every single sacred vessel of gold and silver, All of it was broken down and carted off to Babylon. It was a total spiritual and national humiliation.
But then, right at the very end, the book gives us this completely unexpected twist. It contrasts the fates of two different kings. On the one hand, you have Zedekiah, the rebel. He suffers a horrific end. He's forced to watch his sons get executed right in front of him, then he's blinded and left to die in a prison. But then there's Jehoiachin, a king who was taken captive years earlier, and he is suddenly and almost inexplicably shown mercy.
So, after all that death and destruction, the entire book of Jeremiah concludes on this one tiny glimmer of hope. The new king of Babylon releases Jehoiachin from prison and gives him a place of honor at his table for the rest of his life. And this small act of grace is a huge signal. God's covenant promise to King David isn't broken. Even in exile, the royal line is not completely, totally extinguished. So what's the enduring message we're supposed to take away from this dramatic finale? I mean, how do we pull it all together, these two chapters, one of prophecy and one of history?
You can really see the parallels when you put them side by side like this. Divine judgment, it's declared against Babylon's pride in chapter 51, and then it's executed upon Judah's rebellion in 52. God's sovereignty, first you see him using nations as his tool, then you see his word proven true through actual history. The themes are just so consistent. Pride leads to a fall, disobedience leads to ruin, but even in the deepest darkness, hope is preserved.
When you boil it all down, the main takeaway comes from the structure itself. Placing the prophecy right before the historical fulfillment is designed to prove one central, crucial truth. God's word is reliable. What he declares, whether it's judgment or that little glimmer of hope, he will bring to pass. His words aren't just ideas, they actually shape history.
And that leaves us with a final question to think about. I mean, the fall of Babylon, an empire that seemed completely absolute and unshakable, was once unimaginable, and the destruction of Jerusalem must have felt like a total abandonment by God. So, in our own world, when human power can seem so total and overwhelming, what does it truly mean to trust that a higher sovereignty is ultimately and always in control?